Okay, if everybody could please rise for the national siren. Erev Tov. I want to welcome everybody to this year's Yom Hazikaron Tekes, the ceremony for Israel's fallen soldiers. Tonight, I'll be speaking in memory of the 23,745 soldiers who have died for this country. Yom Hazikaron is the hardest day of the year for many of us. Unlike other places in the world who have to look for inspiration, for people to speak, this is a part of all of our lives. A lot of people here in Israel, most people in IDC and OU-JLIC in our community have served, are serving now, or are going to serve. This day is to remember the sacrifice of our soldiers and unbearable pain of the families that have lost their loved ones. We owe all that we have to those heroes. We are here on their merits and the merits of their families that lost their whole world in an instant. We mark this day of remembrance once a year, but these families carry their pain with them every second, every day. I drafted as a soldier to the Special Forces in 2017, and I quickly understood what loss was. My first month in the Army, my medic committed suicide by shooting himself in the head. This opened my eyes to the hardships of what being a soldier meant, and I felt a heavy weight on my shoulders. Not too long after this, when I finished training, my unit was on a mission in an Arab village and during the mission, the soldiers had to navigate through crowded neighborhoods to capture a terrorist. While they were on their way to his hideout, another terrorist had thrown a 200-pound boulder off a roof in the middle of the night, and it landed on one of our soldiers and crushed his head. He was killed just like that. 1 second he was here, the next he was gone. His name was Ronan Lubarsky. He died at 20 years old. He was a son, a brother, and a hero. Now I'm going to read a small excerpt that his brother wrote for his funeral. Dear brother, tell me, how did we reach this weird situation? Although you were so modest and I'm nothing compared to you, I will now become a much better person thanks to you. Everyone is talking about you, everyone loves you, you are such a hero, such a champ, you always fought. They say free choice is the strongest human trait and you chose your entire life. You walked through every closed door, wherever you heard no, you said yes, and you are better than anyone. Many countries have an Independence Day and a Memorial Day, but not immediately following each other like we do. It seems odd that we should have these clash of emotions, being sad and happy. I eventually understood that only by linking Memorial Day for our soldiers and independence for our nation can we fully appreciate the meaning of both. Because the courage of our soldiers restored our independence, and our independence restored the courage of our soldiers. For thousands of years, Jews were not able to defend ourselves. It was only after the birth of the State of Israel and the IDF did we begin a new period of Jewish history, where we are no longer weak, rather strong and courageous. Because of these soldiers, we no longer needed to bow down to our enemies or beg others to defend us. Israel is a miracle occurring right before our eyes, but this miracle came at a heavy price, and I am eternally grateful for those that paid the ultimate price. It is still our duty to ensure that the last fallen will be the last fallen, and so we must honor the fallen and their families, that we will continue to carry the flag of those no longer with us. We will continue to build a strong and safe country, a flourishing country, a home for any Jew that gives equal rights and opportunities to all its citizens, a country that reaches the moon but with its feet solid on the ground, a country that will make us proud. As we grieve for the fallen today, I hope that their families can take some comfort, however small, in knowing that Israel lives because of them, and that an entire people stands tall again because of them. So today, a tall and proud Jewish people salute them. Now I'd like to welcome a lineup of amazing speakers that generously agreed to share some of their stories.
I drafted on the 10th of June. I drafted on the 10th of June of 2014. At the time, things were pretty normal for the relatively not normal Hyman family. Father Moshe was an officer in combat intelligence. My classmate Arbel was at the beginning of his training for a commander unit. And Yuval Zichron Levracha was an officer's course. At the end of the summer, things weren't as they were. Moshe left the army, Arbel wasn't doing combat, and Yuval didn't survive the battle. Yuval was 2 years above us in school, and he had a way about him that was kind of magical. You can see his smile here. He would look at you when your day was better. The Hebrew term, Mayim Shketim Chodrim Amok, defines him perfectly. He was humble, wouldn't say much, but everything he did was powerful, meaningful, and he excelled at it. He was a top student, he was a runner, and everyone loved him. He drafted to the paratroopers and was in charge of dismantling bombs and anything to do with explosives for his brigade. He then became a commander very quickly. Went out to officer's course, and after finishing the first half, protective edge broke out, and his Gdud Defore, was called to get ready to possibly go in to the Gaza Strip and to protect the Yeshuvim on the outskirts of the Strip. He volunteered to be the head of communication for the Magad, which means he has to carry extra weight, has to have more technical expertise than his peers, and it means that he has more responsibility. But that was him, taking responsibility when needed. On the 26th of July, 2014, a group of terrorists came out of a tunnel next to Nir Am, a kibbutz outside of the strip. And he was called to check the area. We're driving in his Jeep together with a Magad and 2 other soldiers. An RPG rocket was shot at the Jeep. They jumped out and went to confront these terrorists. While being shot at with heavy machine gun fire, Yuval managed to empty all his magazines, fighting a heroic battle before the deadly outcome. Last year, Beit Avichai in Jerusalem did a project together with partners of the fallen. They did a video about what they like to do together. And Yuval and Ravaya, his girlfriend, used to go every time they were in Jerusalem to a special spot on the walls of the old city. They would sit there and speak about all the important things in life and how the future was going to look like. The video ends with a line of characters from our history walking along the walls, as if saying, we're here as well. King David, some shepherds, old soldiers. And then Yuval stands up and joins the group. Sagam Yuval Hayman, Zichrono Livracha, was 21 when he fell fighting for the country he loved dearly. Yehi Zichro Baruch.
March 16th.
Turn it on.
March 16th, 2018 was a very exciting day in my unit. It was the day that all of the soldiers from the draft of March 2015 would be officially released from 3 years of serving in combat. This, however, wasn't the case for Ziv Daus. Ziv, a shy and kind individual, had made the decision to sign more time as an officer. While the rest of us uploaded pictures celebrating the last day of our service, Ziv spent March 16th in the field with 3 of his soldiers in his first day as a lieutenant. I remember the horrific phone calls and devastating headlines delivering the worst news possible. Ziv was killed in a terrorist attack. I'm reading the following text on behalf of his close friend, Malka. Translated from Hebrew. Ziv, I want this to feel fresh each day, as if every day is the day that we lost you. I don't want the pain to go away. I don't want the pain to heal with time, because as time passes, memories are lost, and I feel like this pain is the only thing keeping me close to you. So I'm afraid. I'm afraid that it will stop hurting. I'm afraid that I'll forget all of the little things that remind me of you. And I'm even more afraid to remember, because maybe I've already forgotten. The thing about time is that time doesn't ask us if it can continue, just like time didn't ask you. So I'm continuing. I'm learning and laughing and working, and while I continue, I'm hurting. And I'm sure this is the same for all of us. I don't know what will awaken this pain in the future, the pain that doesn't allow me to breathe, but it seems like every day I'm waiting for this moment, the moment where it feels like the whole world is collapsing, because in these moments, time stops for a little while, and I'm with you. It's hard for me to believe that you won't answer the phone when I call, that you won't come to visit me in New York, that I won't see you next time I'm in Israel. There's nobody like you in the world, sweet, humble, and so caring for others. I only have good things to say about you. How does this always happen to the best people? There are so many things I don't understand, but there is one thing I know for sure. Your life won't end here. In a world where people hide behind fake smiles, your smile is real. Ziv, I want the whole world to know how it feels when you smile, because maybe that way they'll truly understand what we lost. Ziv's uncle shared how much he loved his service. He fought to raise his medical profile so he could serve in a combat role. 6 months before the attack, Ziv asked his mother to buy another soldier a watch with his own money. He explained that a soldier kept receiving punishments because he didn't own a watch and was always late. He did everything he could to contribute to the country. Some people are motivated by hatred, his uncle said, whereas we're motivated by love. Those who are motivated by love will always prevail.
I told the people that I was working with today not to talk to me until tomorrow night. Yom Hazikaron is always the hardest day of the year for me. And although, even from a young age, the aspect of death or passing in my life wasn't something new, I never really understood what Yom Hazikaron was and how meaningful it would be to me. So unlike those who went before me, I'm not going to talk about any one of the various people that I met through my service, or any one of the soldiers, or officers, commanders that passed, because I'm simply not ready to do that yet. So I'm going to talk about what Yom Hazikaron means to me. Although in high school was the first time I understood, or first time I encountered Yom Hazikaron, where in high school we did a play, and we played out this Israeli play, somber, recognizing Yom Hazikaron. And I played a great part, and it was fascinating. We practiced for months. But when I look back on that, I realized that didn't even come close. Yom Hazikaron is the day where we remember everything that people have done for you, for us, for me, to be in this country, to live in this country, for this country to exist, despite being attacked every single day, despite being constantly in a state of war. Israel has never been out of state of war since its foundation, not even for 1 minute. And the gift and the cost of our soldiers' lives is what comes to pay for our independence. As Natan said at the beginning, Yom Hazikaron comes right before and travels straight into Yom Ha'atzmaut, is because we can't fully appreciate our independence. We can't fully appreciate what it means to have the state of Israel, to live here, to come study, to laugh, to joke, to learn, to grow, to live, without really fully understanding the cost that it comes at. But he was a hero in silence. He was somebody who you never would see it on him, what he's done. He was always that hard commander, always the one who said, oh, why is he on my back? Why? Just leave me alone. Why are you always yelling? Why are you always on everything, giving me a hard time? But behind the scenes, he's the one who every single soldier, whether it was his or not, especially those who were lone soldiers, were never forgotten. He's the one where he wouldn't go home entire weekends. There was a period of 4 months that he hadn't even seen any of his family, because every time that we had a break, every time that he would be able to go out during the week, over the weekends or not, he's going, buying food, buying utilities. He paid rent for a lone soldier that wasn't even his own. He went to go fully furnish apartments. He went to fly in someone's elderly parents because they didn't know if they were going to make it to the next year. They didn't know if they were going to make it till Miuchedet came. And after the war, 2014. When one morning all our soldiers, I had a conversation with him, talking with him about what it means to be a soldier, whether I should stay on, whether I should sign. And he, in his beautiful smile, said, Ari, in the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Because whether it be in the army or beyond, you're always going to be serving. You came here as a lone soldier. You came here to give of yourself. And if that's where it ends, that's where it ends in the army. But it's not really where it ends, because you're forever going to be fighting and serving and helping out other people. Not even 6 months later, I was standing over his grave. And that's the last time I've ever gone into Herzliya. Because every time I go back there, I just think about that smile and how I've yet to live up to that expectation. This year, I think that Yom Hazikaron is harder than usual, because while we all were locked away on quarantines, soldiers were not. Soldiers were still fighting. They were still winning, even amidst all of the hardships and restrictions, and they're not leaving for much more than the usual 28 maximum. They were still there, stopped at a bus stop, just at the entrance to his yeshuv, but he never made it home. He called his wife and he said, I'm just stopping for a cup of coffee, I'll be up in just 5 minutes. 3 hours later, they found him not home. And it's this cost that even when we're dealing with our hardship, and we're dealing with the quarantine and all the restrictions,
there are no words that can encompass the magnitude of a person's life. There's no tangible way to add together the sum of the parts that make up the legacy left behind. We're all branches in the massive tree of the universe, growing and sharing the common roots planted by generations and generations of those that came before us, connecting us through an intricate system that echoes and is felt through the smallest of occurrences. His name is Sean Carmelli. Born and raised in South Padre Island, Texas, Sean, a beloved son to Israeli parents and a cherished younger brother to 2 older sisters, a valued friend who loves football and music, posts pictures on Facebook and Instagram with captions like, "Me and the squad." Sean regularly played pickup American football and was a Dallas Cowboys fan. Sean grew up with a love for Israel instilled in him, and from a young age knew that going to the army and serving in the IDF was more than just a goal, but a responsibility. He didn't seek the exemption many children of Israeli parents who were born and raised abroad try to attain. Instead, he opted to move to Israel at the age of 16 in 2009 to finish high school and was drafted just a few months before his 19th birthday. Sean wanted nothing more than to draft to the Golani Brigade because he knew that Golani was always the first soldiers into the action. In March 2012, Sean drafted into the IDF. 2 years later, 2014, his name is First Sergeant Sean Carmelli, serving in the 13th Golani Brigade. With the status of a lone soldier, Sean endures the struggles of the army life and lack of parents for support with a smile and high morale that he spreads amongst his platoon and fellow soldiers. He is described as an incredible soldier by his superiors and a loyal and trustworthy friend by his peers, the kind of person you can rely on. My brother, a soldier in the same brigade at the time as Sean, recalls the way he made them laugh even in the hardest of times. Sean spoke often about the hardships of the army, but never with negativity. Even when he knew his platoon was going to be sent into the Gaza Strip at the beginning of Operation Defensive Edge, he spoke about the fear, but always acted with courage. Sean had the ability to always keep it real. July 20th, 2014, Saturday night. His name is First Sergeant Sean Carmelli. Sean crossed the border of Gaza and Israel with his battalion just like they did the week before. And just like the week before, he ensured his parents, sisters, and friends that he was going to be okay. Just like the week before, him and his comrades made jokes in order to suppress the impending fear. Just like the week before, Sean smiled despite the danger. Sean was killed that Saturday night when the armored personnel carrier that he was in was struck by an anti-tank weapon in Gaza. Sean was one of 13 Golani soldiers killed in the Hamas stronghold of Shajia that night. Sean was serving his final year in the IDF at the time of his death. With his girlfriend at the time, they spoke often about their plans after the army. In an interview after his death, she recalled, "Talking about him now, I think of his smile. He was always so optimistic, so silly, and he was never complaining." Legacy is more than what we just leave behind. Legacy is what we allow and enable to occur after we're gone. We are all connected through the moments of rejoice and tragedy of our nation. It is felt by the whole tree when one branch is cut off. We are connected to Sean and so many others that because of them we find ourselves here today with relative peace and security. On the tree of existence, it is those that gave the ultimate sacrifice from whose branches we can grow. Heroes are neither born nor created by death. Rather, they are shaped by the lives they lived, by the values they stood for, and the legacy they leave behind. Sean is a hero, and we will always remember. His name is Sean Carmelli.
As an Oleh Chadash, it can be hard to connect to the meaning of today. We don't have the same roots established throughout generations like all other Israelis. My first Yom Hazikaron in Israel, I heard this phrase that connects Israelis. Kulam makirim mishu, or makirim mishu shemakir mishu. Everyone knows someone, or knows someone who knows someone. It is with great pain and sorrow that I've been added to the idea of this phrase. The date was Thursday, November 30th, 2017. It had been a year since I had drafted into the army, and my platoon was based on the Lebanon border for the next couple of months. That weekend, half of my machlaka, my squad, was off for Shabbat, so we went out to party like usual with my friends from my garin in Jerusalem. A normal Thursday night. That next Friday morning, I wake up to hundreds of messages from my basic training machlaka, my squad group, with videos and pictures. I scroll up for a good minute, and that's when I see the horrible news. A stabbing attack next to the Nachal basic training base had occurred the night prior. My good friend, Ron Yitzchak Kokia, Zichrono Livracha, had been stabbed by a Bedouin on his way back to base. We used to call him Kukia in the Pluga. He always had a smile on his face, even during the tough times. Due to all the intense training and little sleep, it can be very difficult to get to know someone really well during basic training. But with Ron, we all managed to click from the very beginning, a really true friend. Despite that I was a lone soldier, he always made me feel like I belonged and he was always genuine and upfront with everyone. He'd sometimes joke around and try to put a smirk on everyone's faces during crawling or tough times. He had a clear idea of what he wanted, and he was persistent in getting there. I remember when we received our specialization, we both were assigned to be sharpshooters. I don't know how, but somehow I managed to get a really good shot. And right after, Kukia surpassed my score and remained first on the scoreboard of our machlaka throughout basic training. He then was assigned to be the head sharpshooter for our squad. He had a clear sense of responsibility, and more importantly, what friendship is. A few months after I was released from the army, I sat down with Ron's family to conduct an interview to learn more about a friend I could no longer get to know in person. I made an important shift while at the Kukia family. Yes, we can mourn and feel the pain for those we've lost, but we must keep them alive by embracing their memory. Remember Ron Kukia? He had a sparkly blue eyes and a constant smile on his face. He was that friend that asked if everything's all right when he noticed someone feeling low. And he would persist in getting a smile out of you regardless, despite the shared struggle. We will miss you dearly and honor your memory. Yeh zichro baruch.
It's an honor to welcome our keynote speaker for the night, Mr. Jonathan Davis. We know him as the founder and the head of the RRIS, but more importantly for tonight, he is Lieutenant Colonel and was a reservist paratrooper during the Yom Kippur War and the First Lebanon War. He was also an IDF spokesperson during the Intifada and First Lebanon War. He takes his commitment to the state of Israel and the Jewish people very seriously, and it's our great privilege to be able to hear from him tonight.
It's a solemn day, and we've got students here, some of whom this is their first Memorial Day for the fallen in their young history. It's their first year in Israel to experience this, and there are veterans here, because we have at least 300 former Lund soldiers in the Rafael Recanati International School, not to mention other soldiers who were not Lund soldiers. And we just heard the siren about 32 minutes ago. And that siren basically unites the citizens of Israel. It unites us regardless of what political parties we believe in, what we think about the economy, what we think about Yudan Shomron or don't think about Yudan Shomron, what religious people think, what secular people think, what people of different backgrounds think. This is a day where basically we unite. And of course, remember almost 24,000 soldiers who have fallen in action defending the Jewish people before the founding of the State of Israel and after the State of Israel. And amongst them, amongst the fallen, are students and alumni of IDC Herzliya. Major Ronen Peled in 1998. Roy Avisaf in 2004, killed by terrorists in Sinai on vacation. Lieutenant Colonel Emmanuel Moreno in 2006, for whom our synagogue is named in the dormitories, and who was on a very special mission, such a special mission that until today we can still not be allowed to see his photograph. That's how special the mission was, and that's how special the unit was that Lieutenant Colonel Emmanuel Moreno served in. Major Amichai Itkis who fell in 2010 when his F-16 aircraft crashed near Mitzpeh Ramon. Lieutenant Colonel Amos Greenberg, whose son spoke today at the IDC memorial service which we held on campus. Major Tzafrir Bar-On, who fell in 2014. Lieutenant Colonel Dolev Kedar, who fell in 2014. We lost 3 of our alumni in Tzuk-Eitan. And last but not least, journalist Stephen Satloff, who was executed by ISIS on the Syrian-Iraqi border back in 2014. So we have just begun the month of Iyar. It's considered to be a month which symbolizes courage. It's a week in which we embrace families of the fallen soldiers. But the more I think of it, we should be embracing those families basically every day of the year, and not only on Memorial Day. This is a day that we also need to remember as the fact that the Jewish and democratic state of Israel has not been handed to us on a silver platter. And we really need to understand that. It's not simple to keep this country going. And we are surrounded by enemies all around us. Even as we speak, an Israeli ship was hit by a missile in the Gulf just about an hour ago by the Iranians. Okay, so things are happening in this region, and it never ceases. And last week, we remembered the vicious murder of 6 million Jews, 1/3 of our people. The proximity, by the way, of Holocaust Day to Memorial Day and Independence Day reminds us that we need a Jewish country, and that we have to take advantage of it, and that we have to protect our people. There are some students who study at IDC who come from certain countries around the world where they tell me that one of the reasons they decided to come and study in the RRIS was because they were facing great anti-Semitism where they were. They felt physically threatened, they felt spiritually threatened, and there are dozens of students in the RRIS, from the 4 corners of the world, who have come to study here because there is still anti-Semitism in the world, and there is still terrorism in the world. And last Shabbat, we read Parashat Shmini, where the sons of Aaron, Nadav and Avihu, are killed because they sinned. They didn't sacrifice in the way that they were supposed to sacrifice. They, by the way, were killed on the same day where actually we held a festive occasion where we initiated the Mishkan around that same time. And in spite of the great sadness of the moment and the anxiety of the loss of his 2 sons, Aaron, 3,000 years ago, was a bereaved father. A bereaved father. He lost his 2 sons. And his answer was, Vayidom Aharon. Aharon remained silent. He accepted the harsh situation without anger, without bitterness, without blame. It was kind of like accepting the harsh punishment based on the justice of that time. And Aaron made the ultimate sacrifice. He lost 2 sons. And from his own personal bereavement grew basically the priestly blessings in the future. And generations of priests came from that time. There are some priests in this room right now who are related to that bereaved father of 3,000 years ago. So within the context of Judaism, this is something that we have to understand. And it is our hope that on a solemn day like today, the bereavement and sadness leads us into brighter futures, as it did in the case of Aaron, where so many few further generations of priests were able to bless Jewish congregations around the world. So something positive basically happened out of all of that. And in our situation, when we complete Memorial Day, we will move into Independence Day. And from Independence Day, we'll move into Jerusalem Day, which is the liberation of Jerusalem. And so we really need to understand how we combine all of these different feelings and how we relate to it as a Jewish people, because we've been around here for thousands of years, and it didn't only begin now. It's been happening for 3,000 years. My first experience with death of comrades took place way before you were born. It took place 48 years ago, in April 1973, so it would have been last week, 48 years ago. We, Sayat Chanani, together with other units in the IDF, attacked Beirut on a mission called the Spring of Our Youth. In this mission, 106 terrorists were neutralized, as well as terrorist infrastructure and very important documents were brought back from Beirut. In many ways, the attack on Beirut was retribution for the murder of our athletes in Munich just a few months before that mission. The Munich massacre in the Olympics took place in 1972. This mission took place a few months afterwards in 1973. Unfortunately, during this mission, two of our finest in the unit, Lieutenant Avidah Shor of Kibbutz Shuval and Sergeant Chagai Mayan of Kibbutz Magen, were killed in action. There was a specific assault of the unit of Naif Hawatmeh, who was an individual who broke away from the Popular Front from the liberation of Palestine, which at the time was run by George Habash. And this specific organization had murdered 25 Israeli citizens, including the Ma'alot massacre, which took place in Israel. And these two guys, Avidah and Chagai, managed to neutralize the guards that they need to neutralize by pistol. But unfortunately, a security vehicle of the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine came right by at that moment and discovered them and killed them with Kalashnikov fire emanating from the car. The intelligence which we used to have in those years wasn't the kind of intelligence which we now have, where you are all so technological in the IDF. We were old-fashioned. We used aerial reconnaissance photographs, but we didn't have the exact intelligence on the ground every minute, so there could always be mistakes. It was inspiring and very sad to be part of the honor guard at both of the funerals which took place of Avidah and Chagai after that mission. All of the guys in my unit, and we served in Miluim for many years after that, we're all 48 years older, but they remain 20 and 21, and I'll never forget Lieutenant Avidah Shor, really striking, good-looking guy, intellectual, kibbutznik. His father was the editor of the Olim newspaper. His mother was a South African immigrant who had come to the kibbutz Shulamit. I used to go, when they were still alive, to their memorial every year during Yom Hazikaron. And when I was a lone soldier, and I was about 24 years old, and I was serving with a bachelor's degree already in Sayat Chanani, Avidah used to kind of like break distance, as they say in the IDF, even though he was a lieutenant and I was merely a corporal at the time. He used to kind of like, when I was on guard duty, start talking to me and ask me what he should be studying at the university, what he should do, schmoozing with me, and everything else. And actually, I can see his face. I can see his face as if it was yesterday, just like all the other spokespersons up here who spoke so eloquently about their friends who fell. And there's nothing much else that we can say about it. I had another experience in the Yom Kippur War, which I've shared with some of you, and I'm going to repeat it because it has to do with the unity of the Jewish people. But before that, I should mention that as the Yom Kippur War began, I was in a synagogue in Jerusalem, and all of a sudden, all hell breaks loose, and people start moving around, and you start hearing cars, and we were all called up because we were attacked by the Egyptians. We were caught by the Egyptians really by surprise. We didn't know what was going on around here, and it was pretty sad for all of us. And so when we all got together in Tel Nof, which was at the time the base of Sayeret Tzimchanim, my unit was comprised about 95% of kibbutzniks. 95% kibbutzniks at the time. And news started coming in. Now, some of these kibbutzniks, they were pretty tough people. They were strong. They were in really good shape. They were tough. And news started coming in the first days of the war, of the people from their kibbutzim who fell, high school buddies of theirs. And you'd hear a lot of crying amongst these very, very tough soldiers, and it was pretty demoralizing. And there were all kinds of rumors also about where the Egyptians are and where the Syrians are and what's going on. We didn't know what was going on at all. And it was a very, very difficult war in which we held behind-the-line operations and afterwards ambushes in Sinai and Egypt for Egyptian commandos and different things. And 2,700 soldiers were killed in the war. And the population of Israel was less than 3 million. The population of Israel now is something around 9.4 million. We were less than 3 million at the time, I think 2.7 million people. And we lost 2,700 soldiers. It's every soldier we lose is a huge loss, but this was massive. And basically, what happened was that in my personal life, I came to, I almost said I came to IDC. I came to the Hebrew University back in 1969 on a one-year program from Columbia University. And I had a roommate who was in the 890 paratroopers. Every Shabbat, he used to walk with me into the old city and show me different parts of the old city where his unit liberated parts of the old city. And I was supposed to go back and complete my degree at Columbia. But after Gafni was my roommate at the Hebrew University, I jumped ship, completed my degree, and at the age of 22, I joined Sayeret Tzimchanim at the time. There were no lone soldiers in the paratrooper brigade. I think there were 2 or 3 in the whole of the brigade, and there had been none in Sayeret Tzimchanim. And so basically, the kibbutzniks were all taken care of, but this lone soldier wasn't quite. I didn't have a place to live, so every Shabbat when we got out, I used to go to a different home, and they used to do my laundry, and that was going on for about a year, until Captain Nehemiah Tamari, the commander of Sayeret Tzimchanim, decided that he's going to put an end to this, came with me to Jerusalem, struck his fist on the table of the Ministry of Absorption, and shook up some of those civil servants in Jerusalem and told them he's not leaving here, okay, until I get a room. By the way, Captain Nehemiah Tamari was killed in a helicopter crash when he was already a full general and commander of the Central Command, a great guy, a really great person. So on Memorial Day, I also remember him. But the great achievement of Captain Tamari was that I got a room in a slum, kind of like a slum, in Kiryat Yovel, in Jerusalem. This was a building which was housed by Georgian immigrants who literally had just gotten off of the ship. And I don't think they understood what a person from California was like, let alone a lone soldier from Sayeret Tzimchanim. And when I used to finally get back on a Friday, the light bulbs were usually stolen from the hallway, so you'd press that button, but it would never light up. And sometimes fuses were missing from my fuse box. And other times there was a lot of garbage around because these were individuals who were not used to living in the Western world. And I was quite critical of them, actually. And then we go back to the Yom Kippur War. I went off to fight. And I don't think I came back to my room for at least about 4 months until the first time we could get back to Israel. I think I flew from Refidim or from Egypt in a 707 aircraft, actually. They used to have 707 aircrafts that used to bring us to Ben Gurion Airport. And from there, we used to take 10 people to our different homes. And I got home for the first time. And as I walk into the building, I immediately go to get my mail because there were no emails in those years and no faxes. And the only way to connect with your family overseas was with mail. The mail to the army wasn't all that efficient, so some of the mail came home, and my mailbox was painted red. And all of my letters were glued together, like with this red paint. And there used to be this old man, who I used to call the godfather of the Georgians. He used to sit in front of the building, sipping tea with na'ana. That was his claim to fame. He was kind of like the godfather. Everybody came to seek his advice. So I see him, and I accost him. And I say, look, I know we didn't get along here in the building, but what's the point, okay, if you're painting my mailbox red? One of you people did this. And I'm extremely angry, okay, when I'm speaking to him. And maybe I'm a little uppity. And maybe I'm thinking very highly of myself when I do it. And he says to me, I don't really understand what you want from me, okay? We in this building, we knew you were the only soldier in this building, and you went to war. And we painted your mailbox red so that the angel of death would skip over your threshold, just like they skipped over the thresholds of the firstborn in Egypt and kept them alive when you were a Jewish firstborn. And at that moment, I had a flashback of all the experiences in the Yom Kippur War where I could have easily been killed, but wasn't. And then I'm saying to myself, wait a second. There's something spiritual going on around here. Basically, what it is that 3,000 years of, that is thousands of years of Jewish history, of Georgian Jewry, which probably goes back for dozens of centuries. They kept their Judaism alive. And it didn't matter if they came from California or they came from Tbilisi. Didn't matter if they came from LA or from Tbilisi. The fact of the matter was that the blood in their veins was the same blood in my veins. And at the end of the day, maybe that's what kept me alive. At that moment, I embraced the old man, and he embraced me. And from that moment, we broke the ice in that building. I began looking at those Georgian Jews as people, as human beings. And so that experience of the Yom Kippur War was an experience of unity. And I began my talk tonight by telling you that Memorial Day is a day when we have to feel united. All of Israel needs to feel united. And I hope you feel united. And I hope none of you have to experience bad experiences, such as losing loved ones and friends in the IDF, but unfortunately, the way it looks is that we're going to continue needing to defend the Jewish and democratic state of Israel, at least in the foreseeable future. And that's all I have to say for tonight. Thank you.
If everybody could please rise for Kel Malei Rachamim and Hatikva.
Kel Malei Rachamim shochein b'amromim Hamtzei menucha nechona al kanvei hashchina B'malot kedoshim tehorim v'giborim Kizor rakia mirim u'masirim Lenishmat hachayalim ve'achayalot shel tzva hagana liYisrael Shenaflu b'milchamot Yisrael B'filot hagana tagmul u'bitachon ואת מילוי תפקידם ואת שירותם ולנשמות כל לחמי המחתרות וחטיבות הלוחמים ומערכותם ולקהילות המודיעין, הביטחון והמשטרה שחרפו נפשם למות על קדושת השם ובעזרת אלוהי מערכות ישראל הביאו לתקומת האומה והמדינה ולגאולת הארץ ועיר האלוהים ולכל אלה שנרצחו בארץ ובחוצה לה בידי המרצחים מארגוני הטרור בעבור שאנו מתפללים בעד הזכירות נשמותיהם בגן עדן מנוחתם לכן בעל הרחמים יסתירם בסתר כנפיו לעולמים ויצרור בצרור החיים את נשמותיהם אדוני הוא נחלתם בגן עדן תהי מנוחתם וינוחו בשלום המשכבם ויעמדו לגורלם לקץ הימין ונאמר אמן.
Lord b'levav pnimna nefesh Yehudi omiya ulevatem Mizrach kadima ayin letzion Sofia Tikvatenu, Hatikva b'shmot alpayim, להיות עם חופשי בארצנו, ארץ ציון ירושלים. להיות עם חופשי בארצנו, ארץ ציון ירושלים.
Tam Tekes. This concludes the Yom Hazikaron service. Thank you all for coming.